Strong coffee. What does it mean? What is it exactly referring to? Because it's a word that's banded all around the industry all the time. We get people asking us for a strong coffee, and we don't actually know what the customer means and what we in the industry use that term for. So today we're going to look at why we use the word strong when referring to coffee and what it actually refers to in each instance. Because here I've got a double shot of espresso, and if I was to fill that with milk or with water or even just drink it as its own drink, as an espresso, but it's not strong enough for me, there's only one way to make this stronger. One way. Doesn't have anything to do with the roasting technique, the growing technique, the processing, or even when I make it. There's only one way to make this stronger, and that is another shot of coffee. I'm Ryan, your Chief Espresso Officer, and today we're going to look at the word strong in reference to coffee. So before we get into it, let's look at what Google defines the meaning of strong. Obviously, there's a lot of different meanings. This particular meaning is in reference to a solution or a drink. Strong means very intense or of a solution or drink containing a large proportion of a particular substance concentrated, e.g. a strong cup of coffee. So straight off the bat, you can see the fascination with concentration. And there's a big fat finger pointed at it, blatantly referring to the caffeine amount. It doesn't talk about the texture, about flavor notes, about how it's perceived, anything like that. It's purely talking about the concentration. So let's set the record straight with the term strong, because when we get asked in the cafe, they want a strong coffee or your strongest beans, we have to ask a whole series of other questions because we know immediately that person has been misinformed, because there are only two types of strengths when it comes to the coffee tree that we really use in commercial coffee, and they become the two species. Coffee Canephora, which is also known as Robusta, which is instant coffee. Think instant coffee, sometimes coffee flavored drinks, those sort of coffee. That low quality coffee is using Robusta coffee. And Robusta coffee does have more caffeine concentration in the plant itself than its other species, which we use more regularly, called Arabica coffee. Arabica coffee, you'll see it banded around the place, 100% Arabica. You know, we use only 100% Arabica coffee. Arabica coffee is a really lovely, sweet, more nuanced coffee. When you talk about specialty coffee, usually referring to Arabica and not Robusta. So understanding that there's two types of coffee trees, species, that do have different amounts of caffeine. I would say most people, most cafes, most online stores, unless specified otherwise, are using 100% Arabica coffee these days. Now, blends might be a blend of both, but most people are used to drinking that high, rich tasting coffee. The actual plant itself, like this tree here, is an Arabica species. No matter what origin it comes from, Brazil, Guatemala, Nicaragua, if the variety of the tree, the species of the tree, isn't Robusta, the caffeine content is all going to be equal. So what we're talking about in terms of strength is its perceived strength, or its flavor, its body, and we'll go into those a little bit more. But just understand that the only two different types of caffeine amount in coffee are the two species of tree. And most people don't like drinking Robusta coffee because it's so bitter and it's so dark, and it obviously has twice the amount of caffeine. So if there is an option in changing the concentration of your coffee other than adding more coffee, what do people mean when they ask for strong coffee? Generally speaking, I think if you're in the older generation, my age or older, you've grown up on instant coffee, and instant coffee is made with Robusta. It's low quality coffee, it's punchy, it's bitter, it doesn't have many nuanced flavors in it, certainly not as sweet as Arabica coffee, but the idea is just to get your caffeine hit so you can get on with the day. If that's you, then what you need to look for is a coffee that closely resembles that. You can't find Robusta all the time, although you may be able to find blends that have 20% Robusta in them, because Robusta on its own is pretty hard to drink, and that's why instant coffee isn't revered as the highest quality coffee. Maybe you're a smoker, maybe you like the bitter flavors, maybe you just don't care about the sweetness of coffee and you want the punch, then look for Robusta coffee. You want to recreate that flavor that you've been force-fed for the better part of a century with bitter, burnt flavors. The problem is we're so accustomed to the Arabica coffee that if we served you Robusta coffee, we'd be out of business pretty quickly, because not many people actually want that level of intensity, of caffeine, of bitterness, of burnt flavors. You're actually wanting what we'll refer to as the body to be heavy and full, and we'll talk about that now. So strong coffee is kind of a taboo in the industry. We don't refer to any coffee as strong coffee. We don't really go out to our suppliers, the importers, and say, what sort of strong coffees have you got coming in this week? Because it's not really a clear term for us. Customers, however, will use strong coffee all the time because it's a perception of the flavor of how it's received in your mouth. In fact, there's an Australian company called Killer Coffee which claims to have the most caffeine ever in a coffee that you can possibly have. Now, they'll spin it and say that it's to do with their particular proprietary roasting process that somehow gets more concentration of caffeine or strength somehow into the coffee. I did a little bit of research because I really wanted to understand how are they doing this, because I thought, well, maybe they're using Robusta coffee. Maybe they're saying it's like strong and using Robusta coffee to give the caffeine concentration into the coffee. But they claim to use 100% Arabica. You know from what I just explained to you that all Arabica variety trees have the same roughly amount of caffeine in them. I mean, there might be a minute difference depending on which variety it is, but it's imperceivable. How can you have Arabica coffee with more concentration of caffeine in it? When I did the maths, they're claiming to have 180 milligrams of caffeine per 100 ml of coffee. Now that on the first glance that's ridiculously high. You think, oh my God, that's like 3 times higher than my coffee. When I broke it down, I actually realized they just are spinning the same words that we use in a different way. 1 shot of coffee, about 30 mils, contains 63 or thereabouts milligrams of caffeine in it. Now extrapolate that out to 100 mil, so 3.3 times, and you get 180 milligrams of caffeine. So really what they're saying is just it's a regular coffee, but they're calling it killer coffee. Maybe they are roasting it a little bit darker, so it's perceived as being stronger, but it's no different to a regular coffee. Killer coffee, I'm sorry, you can claim to have all the great roasting techniques that make it more concentrated in caffeine, but the numbers don't lie. What you've created is a marketing hype around a regular Arabica coffee, just maybe roasting it a bit darker, and I will do a follow-up. I will actually buy some, I will reach out to Killer Coffee, and we will find out why they are spinning this as stronger coffee, when in fact, it's the same amount of caffeine as this coffee right here. How can you, as a customer, express what you want in words that the industry will understand? So you want strong coffee. What do you ask for? Because what you want is something that's going to give you a bit of a punch. Obviously, the caffeine's in there, and you're not asking for different size caffeine amounts. You just want something that's going to feel and taste nice and strong. So let's explain a term that you might not have used, and that is called body. So what does body mean? Body is defined when we're talking about coffee and sometimes wine and other foods as a mouth feel. So it's got a heaviness, and you do notice it on your tongue. If you've ever drunk anything that's kind of like a light wine, you'll notice it's quite silky and light, but then you have a really rich, full-bodied wine and it will feel heavier on the tongue. That's the same for coffee. And so what most people refer to when they ask for strong coffee is actually a full-bodied coffee. Now you say to any industry person in coffee, I want a full-bodied coffee, they know exactly what you mean, and they'll refer you to our chocolatey, deeper, darker toned coffees like Papua New Guinea or your Kenyans or your Rwandans, those sort of flavors where they're dark chocolate, you know, cacao, baker's chocolate. They have a perception of being stronger. That's what most people refer to when you call a coffee full-bodied. Now remember, they all have the same caffeine level. It's just a perception of that mouthfeel. There is another way to make your coffee stronger, and that's by adjusting the ratio. A regular coffee, 8-ounce coffee, will have 7 parts milk or water to 1 part coffee. Now, that can be adjusted depending on where you are. It might be 6 to 1, it might be 5 to 1, but that does change, again, the perception of strength. Same amount of caffeine, because we're talking about 1 fluid ounce containing about 63 milligrams of caffeine. So 1 fluid ounce to 7 parts water or milk will be a standard coffee. You want to make it stronger? Ask for a double shot. You want to make it stronger again? A triple shot. Or maybe you don't want as much milk, then you can ask for something like a piccolo. And a piccolo is 1 shot of coffee in a 4-ounce cup. So it's 3 to 1. So then you'll get a really nice concentration of coffee to milk, but the same amount of caffeine. Just remember, there's no more caffeine in any coffee unless you change the species of coffee or you add more coffee. As baristas, we often find we're constantly having to educate customers to make them realize that coffee shots are all the same caffeine. Even by reducing the milk in your cup to make it a 3/4 latte perhaps, that will make the perception of the strength stronger. Now, this is a really interesting thing that we find happen all the time with our decaf drinkers. We had a customer come in the other day who wanted a hot chocolate because she had already had 2 coffees already in the morning. Now, I heard that and I said, well, we have decaf as well, and our decaf is not terrible tasting decaf. And if you've ever tried decaf before and gone, that's horrible, that's just one style of decaf. If you want to watch how really good decaf works, check out this video here on all the different types of decaf, including the one that we use. Specialty decaf tastes as good as regular coffee without the caffeine. So I explained to this lady, if you want to have decaf coffee in your hot chocolate and make it a mocha, but on decaf, you're going to get the same nice coffee feeling without the caffeine. She went, yes, please give me that. So I started making it. Then I said, do you want 1 or 2 shots? And she said a really interesting thing. She went, oh, better give me 1 shot because I've already had 2 coffees. Now, in that sentence, she realized that there's no caffeine in the decaf, so she didn't want a strong coffee because she thought she already had too much caffeine. However, a strong tasting coffee with decaf has no caffeine in it, therefore you get the satisfaction of the strength flavor, but not the strength of the caffeine. That's something that I found really interesting, because even though we're talking about a coffee that has no caffeine in it, the idea of having a double shot of that made her think, no, I can't have a double shot of coffee because I've already had coffees. Now, don't try to tell me that dark roasted coffee has more caffeine in it. Yes, it will seem and taste stronger. Again, that's a perception. It's not anything to do with the amount of caffeine. In fact, dark roasted coffee has slightly less caffeine in it than light roasted coffee, but that's something for another video altogether. But don't get fooled into thinking that because it looks darker and it looks blacker and it tastes bitter and it tastes burnt, that it's stronger. You've got to start replacing the word, the terminology. You've got to start replacing stronger with full-bodied. When you go into a cafe, ask them what is their most full-bodied coffee, or punchiness, or upfront flavors. Those are the terms that you need to get used to using and replace. Get rid of strong. Strong is only if you need extra shots in your latte or whatever coffee you're drinking. Okay, so hopefully you found this video entertaining and informative, and if so, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. If you have questions about anything, put a comment in the section below and reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions you have. If you want to dispute something that we've said, you disagree, you feel like I'm wrong, let me know. I'm always learning more every day anyway, so I want to know what your thoughts are on what strong coffee is and whether you agree with me that there's no such thing or you think there is. I'm Ryan, your Chief Espresso Officer. Enjoy your brew.